I didn't expect the Alaskan wilderness to be this alive. When I signed on for a week of isolated camping in the vast, unforgiving landscape of the last frontier, I thought it would be the perfect way to clear my head. No distractions. No people. Just me, the trees, and the snow. I was wrong. It started on the first night. The sun had barely set behind the jagged peaks of the mountains, casting a sickly orange light over the endless snow. I was setting up camp when I heard it. A noise. A crackling, like something moving through the underbrush. But when I turned around, there was nothing. Just the wind, howling through the trees. I didn't think much of it, just the wind playing tricks. But then it came again. Closer this time. I stood still, listening as the snow crunched under the weight of something large moving just beyond the tree line. My breath caught in my throat as a shadow moved across the white expanse, just out of view. That's when I saw it. Two glowing eyes peering from the darkness, watching me. Not an animal. Not a bear or a wolf. Something else. Something, human, but not. I froze, not sure whether to run or to hide. My heart pounded in my chest as the figure stepped into the edge of the firelight, its face obscured by a hood. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was stare. And then, it spoke. You shouldn't be here. I didn't respond at first. I couldn't. The voice was low, almost a whisper, but there was a coldness to it that sent a shiver up my spine. It wasn't a warning. It was a fact. The figure stood motionless, just a few feet from the fire, his features hidden beneath a heavy, weathered hood. I couldn't see his face clearly, but the shape of him was wrong, too tall, too wide, like he didn't belong. It was as if the darkness itself had taken form and was standing there, just waiting. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. The wind howled louder, biting at my skin, but it didn't matter. All I could hear was the sound of my own breath, shallow and quick. Finally, I forced myself to speak. Who are you? The words were hoarse, coming out weaker than I intended. I wasn't sure if I was talking to the man, or whatever it was, but I needed some answer. I needed to know what the hell was happening. The figure tilted its head slowly, like it was studying me, and then it stepped closer, just enough that I could smell the bitter scent of decay, like wet earth and something rotting beneath the soil. I'm the one who keeps this place quiet, it said, its voice taking on an eerie, hollow quality. And you've disturbed it. I stepped back instinctively, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Disturbed it? What are you talking about? My voice was louder now, though my legs felt like they might give out at any second. I wasn't used to being this afraid. It didn't answer right away. Instead, it reached up slowly, pulling back the hood just enough for me to see its face, or what was left of it. The skin was pale, stretched tight over bone, and the eyes, wide and black, stared at me with a kind of empty hunger. There was no life in them, no warmth. Just an endless void. And then it smiled. A twisted, grotesque grin that made my stomach churn. You're not going to leave, it said. No one ever does. I wanted to scream. To run. But my legs wouldn't move. It was as if the air around me had thickened, making it harder to breathe, to think. I could barely process what I was seeing. The figure's face, it wasn't just disfigured. It looked wrong. Like something that had been forced into a shape that wasn't its own, its features distorted beyond recognition. The thing in front of me took a step forward, and my body finally reacted. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on a rock, sending me sprawling into the snow. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding, and turned to run, but the snow was thick, the ground uneven. My breath was ragged, my vision blurry with fear. Where do you think you're going? It called out, the voice now sounding like it came from everywhere, not just from the figure. It echoed in the wind, surrounding me. I didn't dare look back. I just ran. I could hear it moving behind me, the sound of boots crunching in the snow, but it was always just out of sight. I pushed myself harder, my legs burning, my lungs screaming for air. I wasn't sure how far I ran. I didn't stop, not until I stumbled and collapsed into the thick snowdrifts near the edge of a cliff. I lay there, trying to catch my breath, every muscle in my body screaming for rest. The cold started to settle in, but it was the silence that unnerved me the most. It felt like the whole world had gone still, like I was the only thing alive in that frozen wasteland. It was then that I heard it again. The voice. Closer now. Behind me. I warned you. I spun around, but there was nothing. The landscape stretched out in front of me, empty and desolate. No figure. No shadow. Just the wind. But I didn't feel alone. I stood up, my heart still racing, and tried to make my way back to camp. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't be out in the open like this. The fire was my only hope. It wasn't until I got back to the clearing that I realized, something was wrong with my camp. The fire had gone out. The tent was torn open, the gear scattered like someone had ransacked it. I had only been gone for a few minutes. But it was clear I wasn't the only one here anymore. And I knew then that I wasn't going to be leaving. I stood frozen, staring at the destruction. The tent, my only shelter, was shredded. The gear I had so carefully packed was scattered across the snow, as if someone had torn through it in a frenzy. I was too terrified to think straight. I had to get out of there. I had to leave, but the fear. It paralyzed me. Every bone in my body screamed for escape, but every movement felt as though it would bring me closer to whatever had done this. The fire was dead. The embers had long since faded into cold, lifeless ash. The wind had picked up, howling through the trees, pushing the snow around in swirling gusts. It felt like the wilderness was closing in on me, like I was trapped in a cage of snow and ice. The silence was deafening. It was a silence that spoke volumes, and I knew, deep down, that the worst was still coming. Then, I heard it. The crunch of snow under heavy boots. Someone, or something, was out there. My heart pounded in my chest, and my legs felt weak. I stumbled back, looking for anything to use as a weapon. A branch. A rock. But there was nothing. Just the emptiness. I wasn't alone. I wanted to scream. To yell for help. But I knew that no one would hear me. I was miles away from any kind of civilization. The thought of it, the isolation, the desperation, made me feel like I was suffocating. The sound of the boots grew louder, closer, until I could see the figure in the distance, moving slowly toward me. It was him. The thing from before. It didn't run. It didn't rush toward me like I expected. No, it walked slowly, methodically, as if it had all the time in the world. The dark eyes locked onto mine from across the clearing. The smile was still there, distorted and wrong. I told you, it said, its voice carrying in the wind like a whispered promise. No one leaves. Not once they've seen me. My mind raced. What did it mean? Who, or what, was this thing? What did it want? Please, I managed to gasp, my voice shaking. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. Just let me go. The figure didn't stop. It didn't even flinch. It was too calm, too sure of itself. You already know, it said, stepping closer. You're not leaving. I could feel the icy grip of terror wrapping around my chest. I backed away slowly, trying to put distance between us, but there was nowhere to go. The ground was treacherous with snow and ice, and the figure was so much faster than I had anticipated. It closed the distance between us in a matter of seconds. The wind picked up, and with it, the temperature dropped even further. I couldn't tell if it was the cold or the terror that made my teeth chatter. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it lunged forward, faster than I could react. I barely had time to react before the thing was on me. Its hands, too long, too cold, gripped my shoulders with a force that sent a jolt of panic through my veins. The breath was knocked out of me as it dragged me backward, away from the wreckage of my camp and into the thick forest beyond. My feet slid across the snow, and my vision blurred with a mixture of terror and the icy air hitting my face. I tried to fight back, thrashing and kicking, but my strength was no match for the creature's iron grip. Its fingers tightened, the bones pressing into my flesh like vice grips, and I realized it wasn't just holding me, it was dragging me toward something. Toward itself. "You're not the first to stumble into my domain," it whispered, its voice vibrating through my bones. "But you're the first who's lasted this long." I gasped, trying to break free. "What are you? What do you want?" It didn't answer. Instead, it hauled me through the trees, moving with unnatural speed, the snow barely making a sound under its feet. My heart was hammering in my chest, each beat thudding louder in my ears. I felt like I was suffocating, like the air itself was closing in around me. Suddenly, the forest opened up into a clearing, and what I saw made my stomach drop. In the center of the clearing was a massive, hollowed-out tree. Its bark was dark, almost black, and it twisted and contorted into unnatural shapes. A cold, damp mist rose from the base of the tree, and the ground was uneven, littered with jagged rocks and broken branches. The creature stopped just in front of the tree, and its grip loosened slightly. I collapsed to the ground, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my mind racing for any way out of this nightmare. "You see," it said, kneeling beside me, "this place, it takes what it needs. And once it has you, there's no going back. Not ever." I struggled to push myself up, but my limbs were weak, my muscles burning from the exertion of running and fighting. The thing leaned in closer, its face inches from mine. "You thought you could survive here," it whispered, "but you won't." The coldness of its breath made my skin crawl, and I realized with a sudden jolt that I was surrounded. I could hear the soft rustling of the trees, but there was something else, too. A whispering, soft and distant at first, but then growing louder. It was all around me, coming from the shadows in the trees, from the cracks in the earth. "Join us," the creature said. "Become one with the land." I looked around, desperation clawing at me. The whispers were no longer distant. They were close. Too close. I saw shapes emerging from the shadows. Figures. Pale, twisted forms, just like the one that had attacked me. They circled around the tree, their eyes glowing in the dark, and I realized, this wasn't just one creature. It was a community. And they were all watching me. My pulse thundered in my ears, a constant, deafening beat, as the figures encircled me. I could barely comprehend what I was seeing. These things, they weren't human. Not in any way I understood. Their skin was stretched taut over their bones, pale and slick, and their eyes were dark, empty, hollow, like the abyss itself was staring back at me. I tried to rise, but my body was too weak, my mind too clouded with fear. The creature that had first found me crouched down next to me, its cold breath brushing my face. "Do you understand now?" it asked, its voice a low, echoing rasp that sent shivers down my spine. "You thought you could survive here. That you could fight it." I looked around at the faces closing in on me, the twisted expressions, the eyes that glowed like dying embers. I couldn't breathe. My throat constricted, the air too thick to inhale. There were so many of them now, at least a dozen, maybe more, each one silently moving closer, their movements unnatural, like shadows shifting across the ground. I wanted to scream. To yell for help. But there was no one. No one would hear me. "You're not going anywhere," the creature whispered, as though reading my thoughts. "Once you've seen the truth, once you've seen us, you belong to this place. This land takes what it wants, and it won't let you leave." I struggled to push myself up, but it was useless. My arms felt like they were made of lead. My legs trembled beneath me. I was surrounded, trapped. There was no way out. The air around me seemed to thicken, and the ground beneath me felt as though it was sinking, as if I were being pulled into the earth itself. I tried to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. The figures drew nearer, their cold eyes fixed on me, their faces twisted with that same, horrible smile. They seemed to be waiting for something. But for what? What did they want from me? The creature that had first found me was standing just behind me now, its voice soft, almost comforting. It's not so bad, really. You'll join us. We are all a part of it, now. The land, the trees, the snow. We are one. I glanced around, panic rising. The whispering, the voices, they were all around me, pressing in from every direction, like the very ground was alive. I couldn't make sense of it. My head was spinning. I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. Suddenly, one of the figures moved forward, its skeletal hand reaching out to touch my arm. The moment it made contact, a cold, electric shock shot through me. It felt like my very soul was being ripped from my body, like the creature's touch was draining the life out of me. Join us, it whispered. Become one with the land. I wanted to fight. I wanted to tear away from its grip, but it was too strong. The other figures crowded in closer, their hands outstretched, their faces contorted with hunger. And then, a voice, different from theirs, pierced through the fog of fear. Leave him alone. I turned my head toward the sound, blinking through the haze of terror. A figure stood just at the edge of the clearing, a shadow against the moonlight. It was human. Real. And it was coming for me. I didn't know who or what the figure was, but the mere presence of it made the creatures hesitate. For a split second, everything stopped. The figures, the pale, twisted things that had been circling me, stayed still, their eyes following the newcomer. Their expressionless faces seemed to twist with confusion, as if they didn't know how to react. The air around me seemed to shift. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a tiny sliver of hope. The figure in the distance moved forward, its steps firm and steady, cutting through the thick mist. As it drew closer, I saw it more clearly. He was tall, with dark, messy hair, dressed in a worn, heavy jacket. His face was rugged, like someone who'd spent a lifetime in the wilderness. But it was his eyes that struck me the most, sharp, determined, like someone who had seen the worst of the world and still managed to survive. Get away from him, the man called out, his voice commanding, strong. One of the creatures hissed in response, a guttural, inhuman sound that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. It lunged forward, but the man raised his hand, and I swear the air around him crackled with energy. The creature froze in place, its body jerking as if struck by an invisible force. The others backed away, their faces contorting into snarls. The man was now standing between me and the creatures, his eyes locked on them with cold precision. He didn't say another word, he didn't need to. His presence alone made them retreat, if only for a moment. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. Who was this person? How was he able to control them like that? He turned to me, his expression softening just a fraction. Are you all right? He asked, his voice gruff but with an edge of concern. I nodded weakly, my breath coming in short gasps. I don't understand. What are they? What's happening? His eyes flicked toward the creatures, who had retreated into the shadows, though their glowing eyes never left us. They're not what they seem. This place. It has a way of pulling things into its grasp. People. Creatures. You're lucky I got here when I did. They've been watching you. They've been waiting. I tried to sit up, my body still shaking from the terror. Who are you? What's going on here? He glanced over his shoulder, where the creatures stood motionless, their twisted forms now just silhouettes in the mist. You need to leave. Now. There's no time to explain everything. But trust me, if you stay here, it won't end well for you. I looked around, still unable to make sense of anything. How do I leave? They won't let me. The man's jaw tightened. That's what they want you to think. They're playing with you. You've seen too much now. You know too much. He took a step closer, his voice low, almost urgent. I can get you out. But you have to trust me. I felt the weight of his words settle on me, but a small part of me, fueled by the terror of everything I'd witnessed, was skeptical. Could I trust him? Or was he just another part of this nightmare? But then I heard it, the low, echoing growl of the creatures, rising from the darkness behind us. They were circling again, getting closer. I didn't have time to think. What do I need to do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The man reached out, grabbing my arm firmly. Run. Don't look back. Whatever you do, don't stop. I didn't hesitate. I followed him, stumbling through the snow, my legs weak, my mind numb with fear. The creatures were closing in, their whispers growing louder, but I pushed myself harder, focusing only on the figure ahead of me. We ran. We ran through the snow, my breath ragged in my chest, the cold biting at my skin. The man led the way, moving with unnatural speed despite the treacherous terrain, his footsteps barely leaving a mark in the thick snow. Every time I tried to look over my shoulder, the creatures were closer, their glowing eyes flickering in the dark like distant stars. I could hear them, feel them, growing nearer. Their twisted whispers grew louder, as though they were speaking directly into my mind, pulling at my very soul. Don't stop, the man shouted, his voice carrying through the wind. I could barely keep up, my legs burning from the effort, my body screaming for rest. But I didn't dare slow down. Not now. Not with them behind us. I couldn't see them, but I could feel them. Like shadows closing in, pressing against my back. The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet, the snow sinking deeper with every step, as if the land itself was trying to swallow us whole. The man glanced over his shoulder, his eyes narrowing. We're almost there, he muttered, more to himself than to me. Just a little further. And then, suddenly, it happened. I stumbled. My foot caught on a hidden rock, sending me crashing into the snow. My body slammed against the cold earth, the air rushing out of my lungs as I gasped for breath. My vision swam as I tried to push myself up, but I couldn't move fast enough. My muscles were exhausted, my entire body trembling. I could hear them now, the creatures closing in. Their movements were faster, more frantic. There was no escaping them. The man turned back, his hand reaching out to me. Get up, he yelled. Get up, we're not done yet. But it was too late. One of the creatures emerged from the shadows, its skeletal hands reaching for me, its twisted face contorted into that same grotesque smile. I couldn't escape. My heart pounded, the fear flooding my system like ice water. I could feel the cold hands inching closer, hear the horrible rasping breaths that came from its mouth. And then, just as I thought it was over, the man lunged forward, his hand grabbing the creature's wrist with a strength I couldn't comprehend. He wrenched it away, his face hard, his jaw clenched with determination. Run, he shouted again, more forcefully this time. Now. I didn't need to be told twice. With every ounce of strength I had left, I pushed myself to my feet and ran, ignoring the stabbing pain in my legs and the burning in my chest. The man followed me, staying just behind, and together we pushed through the snow, through the thick mist, until, finally, there was a break in the trees. A small, makeshift cabin appeared ahead, barely visible in the fog. The door was slightly ajar, a faint light flickering from inside. The man reached it first, throwing open the door and pulling me inside just as the creatures began to circle the cabin. We collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, the silence that followed almost deafening. The man slammed the door shut, locking it behind us. He stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, his face drawn and tired. They won't follow us here, he said, wiping the sweat from his brow. For now. I could hardly process his words. I was shaking, my body in shock from everything that had happened. I looked around, trying to gather my bearings. The cabin was small but warm, a fire crackling in the hearth. The air smelled faintly of wood and something else, something earthy, like moss. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice weak. The man turned toward me, his face serious but soft. "I'm someone who's seen this happen before. I've been hunting these things for years." "Why? What are they?" He sighed, sitting down on a worn chair by the fire. "They're the remnants of this land. Part of it. People who got lost out here, people who stayed out here too long. The land, it doesn't just claim their bodies. It claims their souls." I felt the blood drain from my face. But I wasn't supposed to be here. I was just camping. I didn't know." He nodded grimly. "The land doesn't care about that. Once you've seen it, once you've felt it, there's no going back. You're marked. It will come for you again." I swallowed hard. "What now?" He met my gaze, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Now you stay here. And you wait. You've survived. But you won't be free until you understand what it wants. Until you know what you're up against." The fire crackled between us, its light casting long shadows across the walls. Outside, the wind howled, but for the first time since I'd arrived in Alaska, I felt safe. At least for the moment. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. The land had claimed me. And eventually, it would come back for me. And next time, it wouldn't be so easy to run.